The city hummed in the early hours of the morning, its skyline a jagged silhouette. Against the dark sky, the neon lights of billboards flickering like fading stars. "Officer." Amelia Cooper sat behind the wheel of her patrol car, the steady hum of the engine, beneath her providing the only sound in the otherwise silent streets. Her hands, pale and tense, gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white against the leather. This was her first night on the job, her first real night as a cop, and already the city felt different. Alive in a way she couldn't quite describe, brimming with stories and dangers she had only studied in textbooks and simulations. Beside her, in the passenger seat, sat Rex, her K9 partner. He was a Belgian, Malinois, his dark eyes alert, the muscles of his body coiled with a quiet energy that matched the city's pulse. Rex had been with her since her first day on the force, and though they were still finding their rhythm together, there was a bond forming, a silent understanding between the rookie cop and her highly trained dog. He was more than just a partner. He was her companion in this new world she was stepping into, and she trusted him completely. After all, K9s like Rex had instincts far beyond what humans could fathom. Amelia glanced over at him, watching as his eyes scanned the streets, his ears twitching at the slightest sound. She had been told that K9s could sense things long before humans ever could, but Amelia hadn't quite experienced it firsthand until tonight. She had been trained, yes, but training didn't prepare her for the weight of real danger, for the rush of adrenaline that would surge through her when it was time to act. Just another night on the job, she muttered under her breath, more to herself than Rex, though the dog's ears flicked back in response, as if he understood the weight of her words. Amelia smiled faintly. "All right, boy. Let's see what this city has for us." They cruised through the streets, lights flickering above, a distant hum of traffic echoing through the silence. Amelia passed through alleyways, quiet intersections, and stretches of park where only the occasional late-night jogger could be seen. She had made it through the academy, through the intense training and endless hours of classroom instruction. Now it was time to test everything she had learned. But the longer she drove, the more the weight of the night settled into her chest, pressing down like a stone. Nothing could have prepared her for the real thing, the unpredictability of it. Rex's sudden movement snapped Amelia from her thoughts. He was shifting in his seat, his gaze locked onto something in the distance. His muscles tensed, and his ears swiveled forward. Amelia followed his line of sight and saw nothing out of the ordinary. A group of teenagers laughing as they walked down the sidewalk, their voices carrying through the cool night air. She shrugged. Maybe Rex was just restless. But his sudden agitation wasn't something to ignore. "Easy, boy," she murmured, but Rex's focus didn't waver. The dog was looking at something specific, his body low and poised, ready to act. Amelia's grip tightened on the wheel. She could feel the shift in the air, the way the night seemed to shift from mundane to something else. Her heart beat a little faster. Then it came, a scream. The sound shattered the silence, piercing the night. It was a woman's voice, full of terror and desperation. Amelia's stomach dropped and Rex shot out of his seat, his paws hitting the car floor as his body tensed with purpose. "Rex?" Amelia gasped, her hands already reaching for the radio, but the dog was already on the move, leaping from the car before she could even say a word. "Rex, wait!" she shouted, but her voice was drowned out by the rush of the dog's energy. He was sprinting down the street, his paws hitting the pavement in a blur of motion, headed toward the sound of the scream. Amelia's heart skipped a beat as she threw the car into gear and followed him, racing through the streets with the siren blaring in the quiet of the night. The alley where the sound had come from was narrow, shadowed by tall buildings on either side. Amelia's headlights cut through the darkness as she slammed the brakes, the car skidding to a stop just at the edge of the alley. Rex was already there, his body rigid, as he stood in front of a small, crumpled figure on the ground. A woman, barely conscious, her face battered and bruised. Her clothes were torn, and she was gasping for breath, her body trembling. Rex stood over her, growling low. In his throat, his eyes locked on someone, or something, just out of Amelia's view. Amelia's heart raced as she jumped out of the car, rushing to the woman's side. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Amelia asked, her voice shaking, but the woman didn't respond. Her eyes were wide with fear, but there was something else, something familiar in her gaze that made Amelia's pulse quicken. Then Amelia turned and froze. Standing at the far end of the alley was Officer James Hawthorne, the same man who had been her mentor during her training. The seasoned officer, always calm, always collected, was now staring at her with a look that made Amelia's blood run cold. There was no acknowledgement, no recognition in his eyes, only the cold, hard stare of someone who had just been caught. Rex's growl deepened, his body tensing even more. Amelia's heart pounded as her mind raced. What was Hawthorne doing here? What had happened to this woman? And why was Rex so focused on him? Amelia took a step forward, but her hand was shaking as she reached for her gun. "James, what the hell is going on?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the knot of fear tightening in her chest. Hawthorne's eyes flickered just for a second, but there was something in them, a flash of guilt, of panic. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Rex knew. Amelia's chest tightened, realization hitting her like a ton of bricks. She could feel the weight of the moment, the pressure building in her chest as everything came crashing together. This wasn't just a random call. This wasn't just a scream in the night. This was something much darker, and Rex knew it all along. Amelia's mind was a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and disbelief as she stood frozen, her eyes locked on Officer Hawthorne. The scene around her was a blur. Rex's growls filling the alley, the woman's shallow breathing, and the staccato beat of her own heart. Every instinct told her that something was off, but the truth was just out of reach, as though it had slipped through her fingers like sand. Hawthorne shifted slightly, his eyes darting toward Rex, who was still fixated on him. It was clear to Amelia that the dog wasn't just reacting out of instinct. There was something personal here. Rex's protective stance, the warning in his growl, told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't the same calm, controlled demeanor she had seen from Hawthorne during her training. Something had changed. "James," Amelia said again, her voice quieter this time, though the tremor in it betrayed the fear she was trying to hide. "What's going on? What did you do to her?" The woman on the ground barely moved, her breath shallow, but she was still, conscious enough to make a sound, a faint, pained groan. Amelia knelt beside her, trying to assess the damage. The woman's clothes were ragged, her face pale from shock, but it was the look in her eyes that terrified Amelia the most. Fear. Desperation, recognition. As Amelia reached for her radio, her fingers trembling, she glanced up at Hawthorne. He was still standing at the end of the alley, his hands by his sides, as if waiting for something, or perhaps someone. He didn't move when she called for backup, and for a moment, everything seemed to slow. Amelia could feel it in the pit of her stomach. Whatever was happening here, it was bigger than she could handle alone. She could hear Rex's bark, sharp and demanding, as though the dog was trying to tell her something. Amelia's gaze flicked to him and her mind caught up. She knew Rex. She trusted him. If he was reacting like this, there was a reason. "Backup's on the way," she muttered under her breath, standing up, not taking her eyes off Hawthorne for a moment. Her hand hovered over her gun holster, the weight of it suddenly heavier than it ever had been. Hawthorne was a mentor, a guiding figure in her early days. But now, standing here in this dark alley with Rex on edge, she wasn't sure who he really was. "James," Amelia called again, her voice firmer now. What's going on? Tell me the truth. Hawthorne shifted again, his gaze flickering toward the woman on the ground, and that's when Amelia saw it. A brief flash in his eyes, something desperate, something vulnerable. And then, as if he could no longer hold it back, he spoke. "You don't understand, Amelia," he said, his voice tight, strained. "I didn't want this to happen, but they forced my hand." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what was going on, but she knew one thing. This wasn't just a random encounter. Something was horribly wrong. "They," she pressed, her voice steady but laced with the urgency she felt rising within her. "Who are they, James?" Hawthorne's eyes darted to the shadows around them. The alley was empty, but Amelia could feel the weight of the silence pressing in on them. She was no longer just dealing with a simple patrol. This was a situation with deep, dark roots, the kind of thing that didn't just happen overnight. Before he could answer, the woman on the ground shifted slightly, her hand reaching out to Amelia. She wasn't just reaching for help, she was trying to say something. Amelia leaned in closer, hearing the faintest whisper escape the woman's lips. "Help me. Don't let him go." The words sent a chill down Amelia's spine. She looked at Hawthorne again, her mind racing. He had to be involved in whatever had happened to her, and Rex was the only one who seemed to know the truth. Rex was still growling, low and unrelenting, his eyes never leaving Hawthorne's figure. It was as if the dog was trying to make her see what she couldn't yet understand. Amelia's pulse quickened as she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the truth beginning to crystallize. "You were involved with something, James," Amelia said, her voice hardening as she stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. What was she mixed up in? Who's behind all this? Hawthorne didn't answer immediately. He just stood there looking at her as though trying to decide whether he should run or admit to the reality that was now closing in on him. Amelia's mind raced with the implications of the situation. This wasn't just a case of a woman being attacked. This was bigger. There was something darker beneath the surface, something that involved people far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "She didn't deserve this," Hawthorne finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I couldn't stop it. I tried, but they made me—" "Who made you, James?" Amelia interrupted, her voice sharp now, her finger tightening on the grip of her gun. "What's going on here?" And then, as if the universe had decided she needed the answer, a car screeched around the corner of the alley. Its headlights blazed through the darkness, and Amelia knew instantly that whatever had been happening in this alley was about to escalate. Hawthorne's eyes widened in fear, and for the first time he took a step back. Amelia didn't wait. She moved toward the woman, her focus never leaving Hawthorne, ready for whatever was about to unfold. Rex was right beside her, the tension in his body palpable, as if he too was bracing for the storm to break. The car stopped abruptly, its engine roaring before cutting off. Amelia was ready. This was the moment she had been trained for, but it wasn't the moment she had ever imagined. The door to the car flew open, and out stepped two men, their faces masked, their movements calculated. They weren't here to negotiate, they were here to finish what had been started. Everything in Amelia's body screamed for her to act, but Rex was already one step ahead. The moment the men approached, Rex bolted forward, his body a blur of muscle and speed, tackling the first man to the ground in a flash. The second man barely had time to react before Rex was on him, snapping at his arm, forcing him back with a vicious growl. Amelia didn't wait any longer. She rushed forward, pulling the woman to her feet and out of the line of fire, just as the first man began to struggle beneath Rex's weight. But the chaos wasn't over. Amelia could feel it. This was only the beginning. There were more questions than answers, and the deeper she dug, the more the layers of the story began to unravel. And as Rex continued to protect, as he always did, Amelia realized one thing. No matter where the trail led, they were in this together. The truth might have been hidden in the darkness, but Rex, her loyal canine partner, had found it first. And now it was time to bring it to light. The air around them crackled with tension, thick with the weight of the moment. Amelia held her breath as Rex stood over the fallen man, his powerful jaws still clamped around the man's arm, not allowing him any room to escape. The second man, now disarmed by the sheer force of Rex's attack, struggled to regain his footing. But Rex was relentless, his instincts honed to protect and defend. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest as she yanked the woman, still trembling and weak, further behind her. The woman's eyes flickered with recognition, but the words she was trying to say seemed trapped in her throat, stifled by fear. "Who are they?" Amelia's voice cracked as she asked, though she already knew the answer. These men, these strangers, had come for a reason, and it wasn't just to intimidate. The first man, now on the ground beneath Rex's weight, began to squirm. His mask had slipped off during the struggle, revealing a face Amelia didn't recognize, but there was something in his eyes, something cold and detached, that sent a shiver down her spine. "Don't let them get away, Amelia," the woman gasped, her words labored but desperate. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled under her weight. Amelia steadied her, glancing up at the second man, who was now advancing again, pulling a weapon from beneath his jacket. Amelia's training kicked in. She drew her gun, the cold metal of the weapon familiar in her hand. "Stay down!" she shouted, her voice firm and commanding. The man hesitated, a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he realized just how close he was to danger. But it wasn't just Amelia's gun that held him in place. It was Rex. The dog's growls filled the alley, a low rumble that vibrated in Amelia's chest. Rex wasn't just protecting her. He was protecting everyone around them, the connection between them. Handler and dog, human and canine, was a bond forged in the heat of battle, and in this moment it was stronger than ever. The second man hesitated, his hand trembling as he reached for something in his pocket. Amelia didn't give him a chance. She fired a warning shot, the loud crack echoing down the alley. "Drop it!" she demanded, her voice sharp as a knife. The man froze, his eyes wide. He had no choice but to comply. "Get on the ground," Amelia ordered, taking one more step forward, her gun still trained on him. Rex moved in sync with her, his eyes never leaving the man, his posture unwavering. The second man dropped to his knees, his hands raised in surrender, but it was clear that whatever had brought him here was far from over. Amelia's mind raced. These men were part of something bigger. This wasn't just a random attack, this was organized. The first man, still pinned by Rex, let out a low growl of his own. "You don't know what you're doing," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "You've uncovered something. You can't stop it." Amelia's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her heart sinking. "What's going on?" But the man just smirked, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear and defiance all at once. "You've already lost," he said cryptically. "The truth is bigger than you, rookie." Before she could respond, a distant sound, a siren, cut through the air. Backup was on the way, but it wouldn't be enough. Not yet. Amelia could feel the weight of the truth pressing on her, suffocating her. There was so much more to uncover, so much more hidden beneath the surface. The woman at her side had finally regained some composure, though her hand still shook with fear. They were trying to silence me," she said, her voice breaking with the weight of the revelation. "I knew too much. I've been trying to protect myself, protect the people I care about." "Who are you?" Amelia asked softly, her eyes never leaving the two men. She needed to understand the connection. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but she didn't have enough yet. The woman swallowed hard, looking away. "My name is Olivia Sanders," she said, finally meeting Amelia's gaze. "I used to work for them, for the organization. I saw things, heard things I wasn't supposed to, things that could ruin everything they've built. I tried to leave, but they came for me. They always come for their own." Amelia's heart clenched. She wasn't just dealing with an attack in an alley. She was dealing with a conspiracy that spanned far deeper than she had ever imagined. Olivia was caught in the middle of it, and now Amelia was too. As the backup team arrived, the sound of footsteps and shouting filled the alley. But Amelia couldn't tear her eyes away from the two men on the ground. Rex stood next. To her, his body still tense, but his eyes were softening now, sensing the shift in the situation. "Take them in," she ordered her fellow officers, her voice steady as she holstered her weapon. "But there's more to this than what we've uncovered here." The officers quickly cuffed the men, their faces grim as they pulled them to their feet, and marched them toward the waiting patrol cars. Amelia remained still for a moment, taking in the magnitude of what had just happened. Rex nudged her gently with his nose, as if reminding her that their job wasn't done yet. He was right. They had only scratched the surface. Amelia turned to Olivia, her eyes softening. "You're safe now," she said, her voice quieter, more comforting than before. "But we need to keep moving. There's more to this, and I'm not stopping until we find out everything." Olivia nodded, her eyes tired but grateful. "I know," she whispered, "but you've made the first step. You're not alone in this." And as the two women walked toward the patrol cars, Amelia could feel the weight of their mission shifting. The truth, however dark and twisted, was just beginning to unravel. But with Rex by her side, she knew that no matter how dangerous the road ahead would be, they were ready. Together, they would uncover the secrets buried in the shadows. And with every step, Amelia knew, no matter what lay ahead, justice was coming. The police station buzzed with activity as officers processed the two men, their faces still pale and filled with an undeniable sense of dread. Amelia stood by the edge of the room, watching as the detectives moved quickly, preparing to interrogate the suspects. Her mind raced, the weight of the night's events pressing down on her with a force she hadn't anticipated. "Amelia," Sergeant Lawson called from across the room, his voice cutting through her. "Thoughts. I need to talk to you." She nodded, feeling a flicker of unease. Lawson wasn't the type to summon someone without good reason, and she had a feeling she knew what was coming. Next, as she approached, he motioned to a table where several officers had laid out the contents of the men's bags. Amelia took a seat, her mind still replaying the images of the alley, the sound of Olivia's frantic whispers, the desperate look in her eyes as she'd told her story. "You're not going to believe this," Lawson said, pulling a file across the table. "We've been going through their belongings. There's a coded message hidden in one of their phones, and this," he added, pointing to a thick stack of papers, "is just the beginning." Amelia flipped through the papers, her eyes widening as the pages revealed. Blueprint after blueprint, locations, schedules, personnel files, all neatly organized. Everything she had feared was coming to light. The network they had uncovered wasn't just a local operation. It was global, and it reached deeper than she could have ever imagined. "These men," Lawson continued, "are connected to something much bigger. Ascension. It's not just an extremist group. It's a covert organization with ties to high-ranking officials, military operations, and covert intelligence work." "How deep does it go?" Amelia asked, her voice steady, but her heart thudding in her chest. "We don't know yet," Lawson said grimly, "but we're digging, and we have to move fast before they realize their safe house has been compromised." Amelia clenched her fists, feeling the adrenaline surge through her veins. The walls were closing in, but she wasn't about to back down. She had sworn an oath to protect and serve, and this was no different than any other dangerous situation she had faced, except this time the stakes were higher. "Where do we start?" she asked, leaning forward. "First, we need to locate the secondary operations center, the one they mentioned. If we can get to it before they do, we might be able to stop the rest of their plans. And Amelia," Lawson's voice softened, "be careful. There are too many players involved in this. It's not just about stopping the criminals. It's about making sure we don't fall into their trap." Amelia's eyes narrowed, determination flooding her. "I'm not going anywhere until we bring them down." Hours later, the streets of the city had fallen silent. The earlier chaos had subsided, but in Amelia's mind, the tension was only building. She couldn't shake the feeling that every moment they wasted brought them one step closer to danger. Her canine partner, Rex, sat at her feet, his eyes scanning the area with quiet intensity. It was like he could sense her anxiety, his calm demeanor, a steady presence in the storm of uncertainty swirling around her. As they arrived at a small warehouse on the outskirts of town, Amelia's hand instinctively rested on the gun at her side. The air was thick with anticipation, and the faint hum of the city felt like a distant memory. This wasn't just about stopping criminals anymore. It was about taking down an organization that had roots in places Amelia had never imagined. Rex's ears perked up, and Amelia knew without looking that he had caught something. His instincts were always right. The two of them had been through too much together for her to doubt him now. "We're close," she murmured, taking a slow step forward. Rex's tail twitched in approval, and she smiled to herself. They made their way toward the back of the warehouse, carefully maneuvering between shadowed corners. Rex led the way, moving with the precision of a trained soldier. Amelia's heart raced as the adrenaline kicked in, but she trusted Rex. She trusted her instincts. They were prepared for whatever lay ahead. And then, as they reached the door to the warehouse, Rex suddenly stopped. His body tensed, and his low growl echoed through the empty alley. Amelia raised her hand, signaling for the team to stop. "Something's wrong," she whispered. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as the sound of footsteps echoed. From inside the warehouse, someone was here, and they weren't expecting. "Company, get ready," Lawson whispered from behind her, his voice a sharp contrast to the silence around them. Rex, as always, was the first to react. His growl deepened, and with a single command, Amelia released him. The dog bolted forward, his speed and strength an overwhelming force as he charged into the building. Amelia followed closely behind, her gun drawn. As they entered the darkened warehouse, the sight that greeted them made her heart stop. There, in the dim light, stood a group of men, all dressed in tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks. But one man stood in the front, his posture rigid, his eyes cold and calculating. It was the last person Amelia had expected to see. The man's mask slipped slightly as he turned to face her, his eyes locking with hers. And in that moment, Amelia knew exactly who he was. "Deputy Chief Anderson," she whispered, the words a cold shock. The man smiled, a grin that was anything but friendly. "Did you think you could stop this?" he sneered. And just like that, everything Amelia thought she knew was shattered. She had been chasing the wrong people all along. Back at the station, the revelations felt even more surreal. Amelia and Rex sat together, the weight of the moment settling in. She had never imagined that someone so close to her could be part of something so dark. "Are you okay?" Lawson asked, his voice softer now, a rare show of concern. Amelia didn't answer right away. Instead, she stroked Rex's head, her mind still racing. There were still too many questions, too many things she didn't understand. But she did know one thing. "I'm not stopping until we get to the truth," she said, her voice unwavering. "And I'm going to make sure they all pay for what they've done." The story was far from over, and Amelia knew, no matter where it led her, she would be ready. With Rex by her side, there was no threat too great, no conspiracy too complex. Together, they would expose the dark underbelly of the system and bring justice to those who thought they could hide in the shadows. And when the dust settled, Amelia would be standing tall, the truth finally in her hands. Amelia sat in her small, cluttered office, the weight of the day's revelations pressing on her shoulders. The case she thought she understood had just unraveled into something far darker and more complex than she could have imagined. As Rex lay quietly beside her desk, his head resting on his paws, Amelia replayed the chilling scene in the warehouse over and over again. Deputy Chief Anderson. The realization hit harder than any bullet she'd ever faced in her career. How could someone in her own department, someone she had trusted, be involved in this mess? She needed answers. More answers than the files and intel they had uncovered so far could provide. Amelia's mind raced with possibilities. Anderson had been a mentor to her, a guide through her early years as a rookie cop. How could she have missed the signs? Had it all been a carefully orchestrated facade? And why had he been part of such a dangerous operation in the first place? She knew there was more at play than just a simple betrayal. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sharp buzz of her phone. Lawson's name flashed on the screen. Amelia's stomach tightened, but she answered quickly. Reeves. Lawson's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. We've got a problem. What now? Amelia asked, already bracing herself for whatever bad news was coming next. We've traced Anderson's movements. He's been in contact with someone outside the country, someone connected to Ascension. We've also intercepted communication about a major operation. They're planning something big, and I'm pretty sure Anderson's the one leading it. Amelia's pulse quickened. How do we know it's him? There's more, Lawson continued. We found a video clip from a camera inside the warehouse. It shows Anderson meeting with someone just before you and Rex arrived. They were discussing a secondary target. A target that could shake everything to its core. Who's the target? Amelia asked, her voice tight. That's what we're trying to figure out now. But we're running out of time and we need to move fast. Amelia didn't hesitate. What do we need to do? I'm sending you the intel now, Lawson said. Meet me at the command center in an hour. We're going to need all hands on deck. She hung up the phone, feeling the adrenaline surge through her again. There was no time to waste. Anderson wasn't just a traitor. He was the key to everything. She had to stop him before it was too late. The command center was buzzing with activity when Amelia arrived, her heart pounding as she walked through the door. Lawson stood by the large table, his face grim as he pointed to a series of maps and intel sheets spread out in front of him. This is where we think they're hiding their operation, Lawson said, his finger tapping on a spot on the map. A secluded location in the woods outside of town. We've got surveillance on the area, but we need to move quickly. Ascension won't wait long before they strike. Amelia nodded, her mind already shifting into full gear. She had done the legwork on many high-pressure operations, but this felt different. This wasn't just another bust. This was personal. It was about stopping someone she once trusted, someone who had sold out the people he was sworn to protect. We'll need backup, Amelia said, glancing at Rex. I want the K9 unit to be ready to go. Rex and I can handle the ground search, but I need eyes on the sky. We've got drones on standby, Lawson replied, his eyes meeting hers. But you'll be in charge of this. You know the target. Your instincts have been spot on so far. We're counting on you. The weight of responsibility was immense, but Amelia didn't falter. She had no time to second-guess herself. It was now or never. As the team mobilized, Amelia and Rex made their way to the staging area. The air was cool, a sharp breeze cutting through the night. Rex's body was tense, his muscles coiled in anticipation. Amelia's hand brushed over his fur, grounding herself in the connection they had built over the months. Together, they had been through everything: gunfire, tense standoffs, countless investigations. Rex had always been the steadying force when she needed it the most. And now, in this moment of uncertainty, she needed him more than ever. The convoy rolled out into the night, the flashing lights of the cruisers cutting through the darkness. Amelia's thoughts were sharp, laser-focused on the mission ahead. She thought about Anderson again, the man she had respected, who had been a mentor to her. How could he have gotten involved in this? "We'll get him, Rex," she murmured. The words meant for herself as much as for the dog. "We'll get him, and we'll make this right." They reached the wooded area around 3 a.m. The trees loomed like silent sentinels in the dark, their branches creaking in the wind. Amelia's pulse was steady, but her mind was racing. She motioned for the team to split into groups, each heading toward a different section of the area. Rex's nose twitched, and Amelia knew without asking that he had picked up the scent. "Let's go, boy," she whispered. The forest was eerily quiet, save for the sound of their footsteps crunching through the underbrush. Amelia's eyes scanned the darkness, her senses on high alert. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every rustling leaf seemed to whisper danger. But Rex moved forward confidently, his nose working overtime to track down whatever threat lay ahead. Suddenly, Rex stopped, his body rigid, his ears perked forward. Amelia's heart skipped a beat as she crouched beside him. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Rex's growl was low, vibrating through the air like a warning. Amelia's hand instinctively went to her gun, and she slowly rose to her feet, keeping her eyes on the trees ahead. And then, through the underbrush, she saw it, a figure in the distance, tall, cloaked in shadow, standing still as if waiting for them. "Stay close," Amelia muttered to Rex, her voice low but steady. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest as they moved toward the figure, her hand tightening on her weapon. The figure didn't move as they drew closer. It stood there, as if frozen in place, until Amelia's breath caught in her throat. "Deputy Chief Anderson," she whispered. The man turned slowly, his face illuminated by the faint light from their flashlights. His expression was a mix of defiance and fear. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice cold, but there was a tremor beneath it. "We'll stop you," Amelia said firmly, her eyes never leaving his. Anderson smiled bitterly. "You think you can stop this? You don't understand what you're up against. I understand enough to know you won't win," Amelia replied, her voice steady, the finality of it cutting through the tension. Behind them, the sound of more footsteps echoed through the forest. Anderson's smirk faded as his eyes widened. "Backup's here," Amelia muttered, reaching for her radio. "It's over." Rex growled again, and in that moment, Amelia knew. No matter how deep the betrayal ran, she had found the truth, and with it, the strength to bring justice. Amelia stood facing Anderson, her pulse still steady, but the weight of the moment settling into her bones. Rex, ever vigilant, was locked onto the man, his low growl vibrating through the crisp night air. Amelia could see the flicker of something in Anderson's eyes, fear or regret, it was hard to tell. But what was clear was that the man in front of her wasn't the same deputy chief who had mentored her, who had helped her navigate the labyrinth of police work when she first joined the force. The person standing before her was someone entirely different, a man who had chosen a path of corruption, one that had led him to the heart of a dangerous conspiracy. "You think this is over, don't you?" Anderson's voice was softer now, but there was an edge to it. "You don't understand what you've walked into. You think your little operation is enough to take me down? This goes far beyond you, Amelia." The wind whipped through the trees as Amelia took a step closer, her boots crunching against the fallen leaves. She didn't flinch, didn't back away. She had her weapon ready, but she knew that force wasn't what would win this fight. Truth would. "I understand enough to know you've been lying to everyone around you for years," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. "You betrayed your own people, Anderson. You betrayed me." Anderson's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening, but there was no anger there, only the cold, resigned acceptance of a man who knew the end was near. He glanced at Rex, whose growl had deepened, his muscles rippling beneath his fur. The dog was ready, a living embodiment of the loyalty that had once been part of Anderson's own life before he had betrayed it. "You don't get it, do you?" Anderson muttered as if speaking to himself. "You never will." Amelia took a slow breath, her gaze fixed on him. "I get it better than you think. You made a choice, and now you'll have to live with the consequences of it." The sound of approaching sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with every second. Backup was on the way. Amelia could feel it, the shift, the finality of the Guy moment. She had to hold on, keep it together for just a little while longer. "Your team's already been taken down," she added, her words biting. "Your plans have already been exposed. It's over, Anderson. Whatever you were hoping for, whatever you were planning, it ends here." He shook his head, his lips curling into a bitter smile. "You think it's that simple? You think they'll just let it all fall apart because you found a few names? You're just a pawn in their game, Amelia." Amelia nodded, her eyes still locked on Anderson as he was escorted away. The truth was out, but the battle wasn't over yet. There was more to uncover, more to expose, and she wasn't about to stop until every last piece of the puzzle was in place. For the first time in a long time, Amelia felt the weight of purpose settle over her. This wasn't just about the law. It wasn't just about one case. It was about justice, about exposing the truth no matter how deep it ran, no matter how much it cost. She stood tall, the night air cold against her skin, her partner Rex by her side. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she was ready to see it through. As Amelia and Rex made their way back to the patrol car, she couldn't help but think about the journey they had just started. The battle wasn't over, but they had won this round, and she knew that, with Rex at her side, they were ready for whatever came next. Before she opened the door to the car, she paused and glanced at the camera crew, following them. "Remember this," she said, her voice steady but powerful. "Justice isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. If you believe in what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more of these incredible stories. We're just getting started, and you won't want to miss what's coming next." Rex gave a soft bark, as if to echo her words, and together they drove off into the night, ready to uncover whatever secrets the world was hiding. As the tension in the alley dissipated and the truth began to unfold, Officer Hart stood, with her canine partner Max at her side. The dark figure in the shadows now revealed to be the very person she never expected to see. Her childhood friend. Now a criminal had been exposed, and justice was finally being served. Max had done his job, instinctively following the trail of danger and leading her to this moment. The bond between officer and dog had never felt stronger. Max had saved her in more ways than one. As the suspect was cuffed and led away, Officer Hart took a moment to breathe, reflecting on how far she'd come. She had started this night as a rookie, uncertain of her place, but now she was standing tall, an officer of the law, a protector of the innocent, and a friend to a canine partner who had never let her down. Max sat beside her, his head held high, knowing his job was complete. They were a team through and through. It had been a night of surprises, a night that tested her, but in the end, justice prevailed. And as she looked down at Max, she knew that there would be many more nights like this, nights where the unspoken bond between them would carry them through the toughest challenges. If you were moved by the courage, loyalty, and strength of this incredible canine duo, don't forget to subscribe. These stories of bravery, sacrifice, and unbreakable bonds are just the beginning. Hit that bell so you won't miss out on more heart-pounding moments and life-changing rescues. Join us as we continue to share the amazing work of our four-legged heroes. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Stay tuned for more, and as always, thank you for watching.